Fanfic Corner, presented by Jennifer. Princess Rayla, Part 2. How Shati did it, Rayla didn't know, but when she finally allowed her to stand from the chair, her hair was 3 times the length it had once been, going all the way down her spine. The dragon had braided several plaits into her hair, and then braided them together, sticking jewels and silver clasps into them. It looked amazing, but it made her head feel 4 times heavier than before, and when she sat down, she couldn't even lean back, or the decorations would stab into her neck. Once her hair was decent, as the teacher said, they moved on to her outfit. Apparently, her dragon guard outfit was not fitting for the fiancé of the prince, and she would have to wear something more appropriate. That turned out to be a long dress in midnight blue with ribbons and frills around the hem. The sleeves were tight on her arms, and her neck and shoulders were exposed, only to be covered by a thick silver necklace that made it hard to move her head. Worse were the shoes. Heeled shoes that made her feel like she was constantly on her tiptoes. Sheta insisted she wore the shoes, that after half an hour she was willing to hunt down and painfully murder the designer. Years of training as an assassin did little good against these monsters. But Sheti insisted they were the proper thing for a princess to wear. When she was dressed and able to walk in the shoes, they had moved to the table where Sheti gave her some soup to eat. She screamed when she leaned forward, slurped or dipped her bread into it, telling her to sit up, to dip her spoon carefully, and not even touch the bread. Rayla hated it, but as the dragoness kept reminding her, this was for Cadmondius. The more the lessons continued, the more she realized she didn't know how to be a princess, and that her behavior and manners could seriously embarrass him. She even forced herself to call him Cadmondius, which felt strange and wrong. All day they practiced, but finally Shati said she could leave. Mentally and physically exhausted, Rayla headed towards her room, but then heard the irritating cough she'd come to hate. Miss Shaky was in the hallway, looking at her with disapproval. "Your chambers are this way, Lady Rayla." "But I haven't seen Cadmondius all day." "You can see him tomorrow at lunch. Now this way." She glanced back down the hallway, wanting to go to him, but deciding against it, instead going to her new room. It was grand, equal to the prince's own, but it wasn't the same. For one, it had a bed instead of a nest of pillows. As she undressed and lay down, she felt cold without her natural heater beside her. If she hadn't been so tired, she never would have slept, but exhaustion passed over her and she fell asleep. The next morning, before she got out of bed, Shetty was in her room with another dress to wear for the day and a chair for her to sit in while fixing her hair. "Can't I even have breakfast first?" she groaned as she struggled out of bed and into the chair. "You can wait for me to finish your hair. Now, today we are going over the correct way to address royalty and the difference between royalty and nobility. I have even been studying human customs, as you are surely going to speak to them at some point." Resigning herself to another day of pain and exhaustion, Rayla tried her best and drilling through subjects over hours. The only thing that kept her going was the thought of seeing Callum at lunch. As Miss Shaky led her down the hallway to the prince's study, Rayla tried not to trip over her heels and keep her head high as she walked. Finally, they came to the door that led to the room, but upon entering, the pair soon realized that Callum wasn't there. A guard hurried in behind them. "Ah, Rayla, Madame Chati, I was looking for you. The prince sends his apologies, but he's been called away on urgent business." "So urgent he couldn't tell me himself?" Rayla scoffed. "Forgive me, Rayla. He didn't want to disturb you." She sighed. "I guess that makes sense." "I'm sorry, Rayla." The older dragoness huffed. "And you should be sorry for not addressing her as Lady Rayla," she told the guard, then turned to the Moonshadow. "And if the prince is not here, we should continue with our lessons. So, if we are to take a seat, Lady Rayla?" With a frown, the elf sat and waited for the food, knowing it would probably be cold by the time she was able to eat any of it. It had been 5 days since Rayla had begun her royal training with Chati, learning how to speak, dress, and walk like a lady of court, as well as the histories, cultures, and traditions of the primals and human kingdoms. It was dull, hard, tiring work, but she pushed through it and did her best. The worst part of it was that she hadn't seen Callum at all since it started. He had left to deal with something that he hadn't wanted her to know about, which really annoyed her. She finally got word that he had landed and looked at Chati. Can I go see him, Madame? Madame Chati, it's been days." Narrowing her eyes a little, the Sun Dragoness eventually nodded. "Very well. I'm sure he will appreciate seeing you." Smiling, Rayla stood from her chair, swaying as she got her balance on her heels, and then steadily made her way towards his study. Chati was at her side, correcting her posture as they went. Even when they arrived at the door, the dragon spread her wings to stop the elf from rushing in. "A lady is always announced," she explained, knocking at the door. Once hearing permission to enter, Chati opened the door and bowed lowly. "Your Highness, Lady Rayla is here to see you." Callum half wanted to laugh at the formal introduction of his fiancée, but when she stepped in the room, his jaw dropped. Rayla had long, glorious silver hair, jewels and clasps of metal braided in it almost to create a crown on her head. She wore a long midnight blue dress with green highlights, colors of the Moonshadow Elves. She smiled shyly, then gave a low curtsy. "Your Highness?" He swallowed thickly at her, opening and closing his mouth as he tried to remember how to speak again. The dragoness finally rolled her eyes and raised her head. "Sire?" Callum quickly shook his head. "Oh, yes, right. Rayla, you look, He started, then trailed off, all words failing him. She blushed, looking away a little before turning back with a smile. "It's good to see you again, Cadmondius." "And you, Rayla," he somehow managed, looking her over once more with a deep blush on his cheeks. "I'm sorry that I've been away for so long. I had to deal with something." "What could have happened that caused you to leave for 5 days and not tell me?" Rayla sighed as she approached and looked him over. You look exhausted, Cal. I am, he sighed, leaning against his desk. I'm exhausted and tired and confused. What's wrong? Tell me, I can help. He ran a hand back in his hair and over his horns, sighing. I didn't want to worry before. It's nothing, really. But seeing you like this, being part of the court, it gives me strength, Rayla. What do you mean? She asked, rubbing his shoulders lovingly. What is it? He sighed again, glancing over at her. Several clans are objecting to our union. What? They don't want me to marry you. They are refusing to trade with the other sources until I break our engagement. He quickly turned to her. I never will. I will marry you one day, I swear. But the lack of trade is causing issues. Rayla looked away. Well, we knew we'd be facing things like this. I mean, even normal dragon and elf relationships is shunned, but in arc dragons? You really think I care about that, Rayla? I love you with all my heart. They're the ones with the problem. He merely huffed. They don't even know you, and they're judging you. They claim you're just using me to rise above your station. That you're... Well, I won't repeat what they say. But if it wouldn't have started a civil war, I would have bitten their heads off. Rayla gave a small snort of laughter, but then coughed to hide it, hoping her teacher didn't catch it. There must be something we can do to fix this. Anything? He turned to face her once more, smiling as he reached out and held a lock of her hair. If only they could see you as I do. See you as the brave, smart, loyal, and beautiful woman I see. They would soon realize that you're more than a match for me. More than any dragon could ever be. I mean, look at you, Rayla. His eyes trailed over her dress once more, a smile creeping over his tired face. You look so stunning. You leave me speechless. She smiled back, then reached over and stroked his cheek gently, leaning over and pressing her brow to his neck. It's going to be all right, Cal. We'll sort this out. I know, but these elves and dragons, they know nothing about you, yet they are demanding I leave you. It's just... I don't understand why they can't accept I love you. He mumbled, leaning into her neck as well. Why do they have to think there's something else? Some other reason I chose you? Why can't they just be happy for me? Standing with him so close, she felt his heart, his breath, his love, and warmth. She thought for a moment, then reached up and held onto his shirt. What if I did meet them? What do you mean? Well, I've been learning how to be a lady, so why don't I meet them? As you said, none of them know me, so I'll meet them and show them that I'm worthy of being at your side. He frowned slightly at her, leaning back and looking into her eyes. You do that. I mean, I know you don't like being the center of attention. I'm going to be your wife one day. I'll be the center of attention then, so I might as well get used to it. She smiled softly at him, reaching up and brushing his hair back. We need to show everyone that we won't bow to threats. He smiled then, leant over and kissed her lips tenderly. He ran his hand back into her hair, trying not to knock out any of the jewels. As he pulled back, he kissed her cheek. I love you, Rayla. And I love you, Callum, she whispered back. I guess I need to get ready to be presented. Rayla, thank you for doing this. There's no need to thank me, you silly lizard. She smiled. It felt right to say that again, even if it was just for their ears. Hopefully this will help. It'll be hard work, but I know you can do it. He sighed, then turned to the other dragoness, who had been standing silently in the back of the room. Madame Chatai, Thank you for your work so far with helping Rayla. It is my honor, Your Highness, she said with a bow, and I will ensure that she makes you and the royal family proud at this meeting. The whole of Zadia will see she is worthy of your marriage. I will see to it. He nodded, then lifted her hand to his lips.